Gary Parrish here to play 5 questions on the Tigers with CJ Hurt. CJ, of course, once again in charge of the questions. I'm in charge of the answers. Let's get into it with question number 1.
All right, Gary, question number 1. What is your main takeaway from that Tigers win over Temple over the weekend?
What a performance from DeAndre Williams. He took 18 shots, made 11 of them, got 26 points and 12 rebounds in 37 minutes. So he was on the court all but 3 minutes of that game and really performed at a high level. He's now got back-to-back 26-point games, shot above 60% from the field in both of those games. Just been just a really awesome stretch for him. Obviously, Kendrick Davis is going to get most of the attention on this team, but at least over the past week, DeAndre Williams has been the most important player in that program, and it's just sort of a reminder of how important he's been to this program the entire time he's been here. Like, I think you can reasonably argue right now that even though the first thing people think of when they think of DeAndre Williams is the fact that he's 26 years old playing college basketball, it's become like a punchline in some circles. And I get it. I've made those jokes as well. But the thing you ought to think of when you think of DeAndre Williams is arguably the most important player of the Penny Hardaway era. They have had lottery picks come through here, top-ranked recruits come through here, number 1 ranked recruiting classes come here since Penny Hardaway took over the Memphis program from Tubby Smith. But I think you could argue that the 26-year-old transfer from Evansville has actually been the most important player Penny Hardaway has ever brought into this program since taking over that job.
Question number 2, the Tigers are 7-1 in their past 8 games. How have they been that good in the past 8 games? Or how good have they been, the past 8?
They've been really good. You know, that stretch started with a win over Temple, at Temple. That was on January 15th. And then it ends with, or at least to get us up to date, another victory over Temple on February 12th. So if you take those dates, January 15th, February 12th, and run the data over at barttorvik.com, Memphis is performing like the 38th best team in the country in that 8-game stretch, just between Duke and Illinois, 2 other probable NCAA tournament teams. In that 8-game stretch, Memphis is 1-0 in Quadrant 1, 2-0 in Quadrant 2, 3-1 in Quadrant 3, 2-0 in Quadrant 4. So 3-0 in the first 2 quadrants with that 1 Quadrant 3 loss to Tulane. It'd be nice if you didn't have that one, but still, the Tigers are 6-5 in the first 2 quadrants with just 1 loss outside of that first quadrant. That's a pretty good place to be. It doesn't mean that you got a lot of wiggle room as it pertains to making the NCAA tournament, but you do have a little bit of wiggle room. They're in a good spot right now. If the NCAA tournament started this afternoon, I think they would be in it.
So how does the Tigers' NCAA tournament chances and resume look right now?
Good. Not great, but good. You know, bracketmatrix.com is a website that tracks, I believe, 86 different brackets. And as of Monday morning, Memphis is in most of them. Sometimes a 9 seed, sometimes a 10, sometimes an 11. But in that range is about right. And another encouraging thing, in addition to being above 500 in the first 2 quadrants with only 1 loss outside of the first 2 quadrants, is the fact that they're 30th at barttorvik.com. On the season, ranked 30th in the country. Last season, only 1 team that was in the top 30 at barttorvik.com on Selection Sunday got left out of the NCAA tournament. It was an Oklahoma team that was, I believe, 26th at barttorvik.com. So what that tells us is that if you're in the top 30 at Torvik, you're usually going to be okay. Doesn't guarantee anything, but it is an indicator that you're going to be fine on Selection Sunday. And again, right now at this moment, Memphis is 30th at barttorvik.com.
So what's on tap this week?
2 big games. UCF at home on Thursday, at Houston on Sunday. UCF, that's a Quadrant 2 game. Houston is a Quadrant 1 opportunity, obviously. You could easily argue that this is the biggest week of the season to date. If the Tigers were to somehow go 2-0 this week, they'll be no worse on Sunday night than 1 game back of Houston in the American Athletic Conference standings with 4 regular season games to play. At that point, a conference title would very much be up for grabs. So everything that Memphis set out to accomplish, or at least most things Memphis set out to accomplish, they are still in play right now. We talk next Monday, they might not be. But right now, if you can somehow go 2-0 in your next 2, you can feel really good about heading to the NCAA tournament and even feel good about maybe trying to share an AAC regular season title with Kelvin Sampson's Houston Cougars.
How big, Gary, as we get to the last question, how big is that Houston game for the Tigers?
Very big, but it's certainly not a must-win or anything like that. Like, keep in mind, you are playing a top-5 team on the road. No, literally nobody in the country is supposed to go to Houston and win. I don't care who you think's the best team in the country. Alabama, Purdue, Gonzaga, Kansas, whatever team you think is the best team in the country is not expected to go to Houston and win the game. So a bubble team is not expected to go to Houston and win the game. It's one of these games where it is massive if you win it. It's not a big deal if you lose it. It probably ends your realistic chance, assuming there is a realistic chance of at least sharing a conference title with Houston, but it shouldn't hurt you with any bracketologist in the country. The truth is, Memphis can beat UCF this week, lose to Houston, and still be one game above 500 in the first 2 quadrants. I'm still not convinced they have to beat Houston at all this season to get into the NCAA tournament as an at-large team. But if you're not going to beat Houston, you do got to beat everybody else. There is a scenario where they could lose both Houston games in the regular season, but beat everybody else, and still be 9-7 in the first 2 quadrants based off of the current numbers heading into the AAC tournament with 1 quadrant 3 loss to Tulane also being on the resume. They would still be good with 2 regular season losses to Houston as it pertains to making the tournament, as long as they don't lose to anybody else. And I still think there's a chance you could lose to Houston again in the AAC tournament, still be above 500 in the first 2 quadrants with only 1 loss outside of the first 2 quadrants, and that might still be good enough. So these Houston games are big, but the idea that you have to win any of them, I think, is not entirely true, and certainly it's very understandable to go lose to the Cougars on the road. You'd like to get the win, but as long as Memphis goes 1-1 this week, 1-1 this week, that's all it'll take. When we talk next Monday, the Tigers should still be in pretty much all projected NCAA tournament brackets.